The Twisted Claw, a series of museum thefts, launched the Hardy Boys on this baffling mystery. Rare collections of ancient pirate treasure are being stolen. Who is doing it? And how is this loot being smuggled out of the United States? Frank and Joe's celebrated detective father is working on the case and asks the boys to stake out the Black Parrot, a suspicious freighter docked in Bayport Harbor. Disguised as crewmen, the teenage sleuths board the ship, determined to investigate its cargo holds. Clues that the boys unearth take them on a whirlwind chase after the self-styled Pirate King, a case that leads to their imprisonment in a fantastic Caribbean island stronghold of the Empire of the Twisted Claw. How Frank and Joe cleverly outmaneuver the Pirate King and his cohorts makes a gripping tale of suspense and high adventure.
They pass out because of lack of fresh air. But then they wake up later, which I'm like, no.
That's not how lack of fresh air works. Like, when you pass out from lack of oxygen, you usually don't wake up again, right?
Especially
still in the cargo holds, right?
With the door closed. But they get a second wind somehow.
It's 2019 and everyone gets a podcast. Mine is the Hardy Boys Drinkbook. Each week I sit down with creative and hilarious people to talk about a book in the Hardy Boys mystery series. Today I'm joined by actor Brian Kusic, and we're reading the 18th book in the Hardy Boys mystery series, The Twisted Claw. Get framed for museum vandalism, start a rebellion, and get on and off an airplane a million times in the Hardy Boys Drinkbook podcast number 18, The Twisted Claw, featuring Brian Kusic.
Hello, detectives. Welcome to the podcast. I am here with actor Brian Kusic. Brian, thank you so much for finally being on the show.
Of course, thanks for having me.
I could not have hoped for a better book to have on the show. A lot of people may not know this, but I did a children's series with Buntport Theater for All Ages for several years called Siren Song, A Pirate Odyssey, and Brian was one of my favorite recurring actors.
I think I had 3 parts. I was Crazy Beard Cruel Boots.
Yes.
And then I was the Earworm.
And then your most famous role.
The one that really put me on everyone's list was Toots, God of Recorders.
God of Recorders. And I have been waiting for pirates to appear in the Hardy Boys for 18 books. We were finally on book 18, and they finally showed up.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. They're like pirate knights, though.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of crossover here. It doesn't seem like they've quite figured out their theme, but they are definitely... there's ships, there's being locked in the brig, there's a Caribbean island nation that's ruled by a mad king. They got all the pirate stuff going.
Yeah, a bunch of private jets they chartered, really late.
So one thing I'd kind of like to do, since I didn't do it when I read the book, is I'd kind of like to keep track of how many times they fly in an airplane in this book.
Okay.
Because it takes place over the course of a week, and I think they travel on 11 or 12 different flights in the course of a week.
Yeah, like midnight flights, morning flights.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. A little bit about the Hardy Boys Mystery Series. The Hardy Boys Mystery Series was originally written by Franklin W. Dixon, better known as the inventor of glitter.
Yes.
In the 1920s and 30s, and then in the 50s and 60s, the books were rewritten. They had about 100 pages taken out of the adventure, and some things were changed. And one of the things that was changed that you mentioned to me was how rich the boys are.
Yeah.
In the original books, they're not quite as wealthy, and it seems like more of the books were focused on them overcoming their lack of resources. Not in this book.
So it's like a lot of local mysteries, where are my keys?
Exactly.
I can't find my cat.
Stolen bicycles, things like that. But in this one, the boys have infinite money.
Yeah.
It's like they've entered that code in the video game where they have infinite money.
There's no time restraint on their movement across the world.
No.
They can charter flights out of Miami, out of the Caribbean. They have a private plane.
It's
really nice.
The private plane that they don't always use, but it's there if they need it.
Just in case.
Brian, what was your first impressions of this? Had you read a Hardy Boys book before?
This is actually the first Hardy Boys book I've ever read.
Did it live up to your expectations of what was in a Hardy Boys book?
The only expectations I had were really from South Park.
Okay.
Which is a lot.
You're not the first guest on the host to mention.
Yeah, it was pretty close to that. A lot of clues, a lot of,
yes.
Hunches. a lot of feelings about this area as opposed to this area. Is really close relationship between brothers.
Yes, they're not rivals in any way.
No, they're not.
The best example of this, and I think that this is the book that I have talked about more outside of the podcast than any other book in this series. And this first chapter I have laid out for so many people. I'm just going to walk through it really short. It starts with them at a track meet, and they've both just won gold medals.
Right.
They're both the top of their tier.
Because they're not racing against each other.
No, they're in different events, I guess, at the track meet. They talk to Chet, and they all agree that they're going to meet up with their friends and go to the soda fountain, and then go back. They said, we're going to go grab the other guys, and we'll come back and get you, Chet.
Right.
And then as they're going to get the other guys to go to the soda fountain, there's an announcement over the speaker at the stadium telling them that they have a phone call from their house.
Again, just unlimited money.
Yeah. And I just love the idea of over the loudspeaker, like those little triangular speakers. Just, Frank and Joe Hardy, please report to the operator booth. You have a phone call. And that means that since it's their dad on the phone, neither their parents went to their high school track meet where they're track stars that win gold medals.
Yeah, their parents are really busy.
Yeah. And, well, clearly, Laura's
really
got a
busy.
lot going on.
Yeah, I think she showed up once.
Once in the book. But so they are like, oh, their dad calls them and they says, you need to come home right away. And they race home. But they never check back in with Chet.
No, they just leave him. They do a lot of that in this book, just leaving Chet.
They just leave Chet. So I just imagine him standing there alone looking at his watch being like,
Guys, are you coming?
They should be back any minute. When they get home, their dad tells them that they need to go to the dock and watch a boat all night. But he won't tell them why.
Yeah, that seems like really specific.
He's like, you go, you watch this boat, tell me anything that happens. I can't give you more information. And the boys are fine with that.
Yeah, thanks, Dad.
But then Laura, their mother, comes into the room. I think that she's got a tremendous Valium addiction because she floats into the room on a wave of just total calm. And she's like, there's a man across the street watching the house. He's hiding behind a tree, but he keeps poking his head out, and I can tell he's watching the house.
Right.
Automatically, I'm like, that's a stupid crook.
Yeah, I also feel like those... Because there's two men watching the house.
Yes.
One in front and one in back. And I have a feeling that they are not connected to these pirates at all.
No.
They're just kind of creepy.
They don't seem to have
right?
anything to do with the rest of the mystery.
They don't really come back.
No,
it's just when people aren't watching the house anymore, that's a plus.
But the way that Fenton deals with the guys watching the house is incredibly elaborate.
Yeah.
Joe wants to just go beat up the guy watching the house, which I think is valid.
Yeah, Joe's always about beating people up.
He's like,
again, I don't know the Hardy Boys, but it seems like Joe is going to run into some tough situations real soon.
Yes, especially when he doesn't have his brother with him to be like, well, hold back, Joe.
Yeah.
Don't just
He's going to fight the wrong person.
Yes. Though the boys have super strength. Throughout this book and all the other books.
I've noticed.
They're very strong boys.
Yeah, and apparently very fast, as we learned in the first 2 pages.
Yes, they're track stars. But so Fenton's like, no, we won't go beat him up. Instead, I'm going to call a plumber. And the plumber comes over, and he's like, now the plumber and I are similar builds, so I'm going to put on a full putty makeup disguise. He trades clothes with the plumber. The plumber has no problem with this.
Right, and it was very fine. And also, the full putty disguise happens in half a paragraph.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, he looks like him now.
No, he looks just like him. And then he goes outside, he gets in the plumber's van, he drives away, and then he goes to the airport and he leaves town.
Yeah.
And I just imagine, he never clears that part of it with the plumber. I'm going to take your van and drive to the airport.
No, and they don't have cell phones to be like, hey, by the way, I'm taking your van to the airport.
So later the boys are like, hey, our dad took your van to the airport, we'll give you a ride. Which then I think that's a dead giveaway, right? Because then they see the plumber leave the house again. Or they see the plumber dressed as Fenton Hardy leave the house and go to the airport, which is what Fenton Hardy actually did.
Yeah,
it was
maybe
really
the
weird.
Plumber put on a bunch of prosthetics as well that they didn't talk about because they just figured we'd gather it. Yeah, it seemed a very elaborate scheme as opposed to being like, hey, guy, get out of here.
Yeah.
Right?
What are you doing here? But I do like how we meet Aunt Gertrude, and when she sees her brother in a disguise and the plumber, she can't tell them apart.
it's supposed to be her brother, right?
Yeah.
Gertrude's an interesting character throughout the entire book. She seems...
Do you want to talk a little bit on Gertrude?
Well, she seems at times a little bit more motherly than their mother.
Yes, their mother is checked out.
At other times, she seems a bit on edge for no reason.
She's very high-strung.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this. So they go down to the docks that night, and they're told that they're supposed to just watch this boat. They watch it for like 30 seconds, and then
they're like, let's go on board.
Yeah.
It's like, let's do this.
Yeah, I'm tired of waiting around. We're not learning anything from over here.
It's been like 5 minutes. We should probably sneak on board.
We won't be able to get much information for Dad unless we can board the ship,
Joe remarked. Frank did not speak. Instead, he signaled Joe to follow him and walk towards a crewman who was standing at the base of the gangplank checking the manifest.
My brother and I are very much interested in ships.
Frank began nonchalantly.
Do you think your captain would let us go aboard for a few minutes?
The man glared at them in surprise.
Get out of here!
He roared.
Why get mad at us?
Joe queried.
We were just... You heard me? Get out of here before I take a club to you.
This is one of the most rational responses that the boys have ever received from a person.
Yeah, I'm also really interested in the seaman/pirate that carries a club with him all the time.
Yes, and a clipboard.
Yeah, he's checking the manifest with his club. He's going down the lines with his club.
Yeah, and then they hire the boys. Let's see. The boys come back in just a few minutes and are like, hey, can we have a job? And they're like, oh, you look pretty strong, sure. And then Frank asks for union cards.
I mean, if you're gonna work as a longshoreman, you gotta be part of the union, right?
And then the guy says, forget the union. Sketchy.
Yeah, that's how you know they're pirates.
But also, it seems like a lot of paperwork would have to go through before they could get their union cards.
I'm also just really intrigued on being able to go to a dock and within a matter of moments getting a job.
As a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have trouble finding work right now as a not 17-year-old.
But are you going down to the Denver docks and trying
I try. The security there is really tough to get through.
Yes.
So, last time I was at the Denver docks, I just couldn't get through the gates.
Yes, absolutely. They noticed that one of the guys on the ship has a very, clearly significant ring. And they notice it so much, it seems like they, grabbed the guy's hand like a girl
hold it for a bit too long.
like her friend, like a girl looking at her friend's engagement ring.
Also, I think there's several people that wear rings. There's married people. There's, Eastern Europeans.
Sure.
And then apparently pirates.
Pirates all have a signet ring as well. Yeah, and then Chet, let's see, they get thrown, they get in a fight, right? I can't remember why they get thrown off the ship.
Because Joe's always running his mouth. Joe is just constantly pushing fights.
He's actively picking a fight. And then he feels bad. He's like, I definitely messed things up. But Chet shows up, and Chet's uncharacteristically brave all of a sudden. Drunk brave.
Is Chet usually not the bravest of
He's the shaggy of the group. He's the one who's like, let's get out of here.
Yeah, this book, he's like, can I come? Can I come, please? And they're like, yeah, sure. And then 2 pages later, Chet, stay here.
Yes, they're very finicky with Chet. But he shows up and immediately is like, I'll go talk to those seamen and see what's up. And he goes up the gangplank, and then I imagine a cartoon-style cloud of punching.
Yeah.
And then he comes rolling down, it says, like a beach ball.
Yeah, Chet, he's really having a rough time in these books.
Yeah, later, his current interest in this book is archaeology.
Which comes through, 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah, and it has no payoff. You think they'd set up one of those things, like Chet's really into archaeology, and later that pays off because
he dug something up.
Or his dig site connected to a tunnel that I
was really hoping he found something of use, but
it's nothing. It's just a...
Oh, Chet.
Yeah. I don't... let's see. They completely screw this up. And the ship is called the Black Parrot. There's 2 ships, the Black Parrot and the Yellow Parrot.
Yeah, the Red Parrot sank a few years ago. We don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it, no. It's still a touchy subject.
It's like the Essex.
I can't remember why... Oh, when they get home, that's right. Their dad, they put on disguises before they go to the shipyard, right?
Yeah. No, I think this is later.
Okay.
I think this disguises come after they decide to try to board the ship again.
That's right. They go home and they're like, that didn't work.
Oh, disguises. We need piratey stuff.
So we'll dress like pirates and then sneak back onto the ship. Why do they need to be on the ship?
They don't know. Their dad has given them no clues about
But
anything.
their dad just told them to watch the ship.
Right, but they think to watch something is better to be on it.
Yeah.
Right?
So they're like, they decide they're going to disguise themselves in the car because they don't want their mother and Aunt Gertrude to see them. And,
No, to see them putting on disguises.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Like, it's not to see them. They walk in and then walk out with like arms full of clothes. Bye, Mom. Bye, Gertrude.
And then I imagine in the driveway while their mom can see them.
Okay, now we can put it on.
Cool. Do I look like an old man? No, you look like a teenager dressed like an old man.
But sort of a piratey seaman old man.
Don't they get there and the Black Parrot is like gone? At the dock? There's some point where they show up and they're all prepared to sneak on board and the ship is just gone. But he comes back really fast. Their dad decides that they need to get a book.
And this is the most random thing. This is the first time I was like, oh, they have a private jet? And I don't think it is a jet. It's probably a bi-wing or something.
Yeah,
but
they have a private pilot at least.
yeah, and out of left field, he's like, go pick up this book. And they're like, oh, we must go to New York City. Let's call our pilot we have on retainer.
Jack Wayne. One thing I really liked is that they're like, he's like, hey, where's your dad at? And they're like, oh, he flew to Miami. And he's like, he what?
He's got a, does he have another pilot?
They're like, no, he took commercial.
I was like, oh, cool. So all right. I mean, I guess I'm sitting with his plane for no reason.
Yeah, did he forget that he had a pilot? I was like, yeah, I think the writer did forget that he had a pilot.
I mean, it's really hard to get refunds from Southwest, especially
That's
in Miami.
true. He'd already booked it. So they decide, they're going to fly to New York to get a book called Essays in Criminology by Weaver. But yeah, I just can't believe that he was willing to fly the teenage boys to New York City. But I guess they're in upstate, so it's
I mean, but also, if I had a private jet, why are we not flying everywhere?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
why didn't they get
flying
a
me to
ride?
school in the morning?
Yeah, they should have gotten a ride back from the track meet on their airplane.
Absolutely. So let's see. They find this book. This book is just, I don't know what the plot element of this book is.
It never comes up again.
It was just so that they could see the book that's next to it on the shelf.
Right.
Which
right.
is called The Empire of the Twisted Claw.
And that's when I was first like, oh, that seems important, hence the name being the Twisted Claw.
So this is, yes, absolutely. Which, there is no real actual Twisted Claw in this book.
No, it's just like a ring symbol and a book and something that's on their breastplates.
Most of this chapter is just the story of pirates. And about this pirate king named Kartal who discovered an island, which discovered should in
right.
quotes, because there's definitely people on that island. They make that clear later.
Much like it's like, oh, he discovered that. I think he just like sailed by and was like, that's it. I discovered this island now.
Waved at all the people who lived there.
We're discovering you
now.
too.
Hey, congratulations, you've been discovered. Welcome to the world. Yeah, and apparently this guy came up with an elite personal guard that each had a full suit of armor, perfect for when you're on the high seas.
I mean, if you have a sinking ship, you really want to be in a full suit of armor.
Full suit of armor. And apparently the breastplate, has this twisted claw image on it. They wanted to find out where the island is located. And they're like, if we can take this book to our crime lab, maybe we can look at these faded pages and get more information. And they tried to get the owner to just give them this valuable book.
And he says it's like $1,500 or something.
And they're like, could we take it for like 2 days and just like run some tests on it?
Like, no, I know what your tests are.
Get out of
here.
You're going to dip it in chemicals and shine weird lights.
Yeah, because they don't have scanners to like bring things out.
Nope, they're just literally going to like treat the pages with chemicals and shine ultraviolet light out.
All those Hardy Boys.
I'm glad that the owner didn't give them the book.
I am too. I'm also glad that someone said no to them at some point.
It is interesting how often people just cooperate.
And they make friends with the one person who overheard something just randomly.
Yes. Things are so convenient. I really want to adapt this. I really want to film this absolutely beat for beat and keep all of the unreasonable people who help them and clues they find that they shouldn't have found.
I mean, I would be really willing to play all of the random strangers that have all the information they just happen to need at that time. Particularly the pirate or the old sailor that comes near the end. He was my favorite.
Yes.
He was literally half a page. And then it's like, well, see you later.
They hear on the radio, or no, they read in the paper that the Black Parrot, the ship they were going to sneak onto, had engine troubles and is returning to the Bayport Harbor for repairs. And I was like, that's in the paper?
This paper that they're receiving has the best journalism I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I mean, only pertaining to what they need. But
Yeah, it's targeted towards the Hardy Boys.
it's really interesting. I was wondering, how big is your staff?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
some guy is just on monitoring ship traffic from
he's
the
the
port.
dock reporter.
Dock reporter. Yeah, so they put their disguises back on, and they decide they're going to go, and they decide Chet should come with them and keep watch, basically do what their job was.
Yeah, as they go break into another place.
In silly disguises.
I mean, I was really... If I could get onto every ship like that, I would be a lot happier.
Yeah, I would just disguise myself as like a 70-year-old man and go on cruises and be like, I don't know where my ticket is.
I've lost my ticket.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
My wife's on. She has the tickets.
No,
and
I
then they're
lost
like,
my wallet,
just
too.
go
Can-
on board. Fine.
Can you give me some money before I go
Yeah,
on?
here's some money.
Thank you. Did it again, Joe.
As Joe is like the wife.
Yeah.
When a guy sees them on board, he says to them, I ain't seen you guys aboard before. And then it says, Frank mumbled in double talk.
Do you know what that means?
No, do you know what
Here's what. So what the thing is double talk.
Double
you know,
talk.
you say nothing but everything.
And then rather than be like, wait, what? The guy's like, well, you better check in with the first mate. And they're like, will do. And then they don't.
I mean, well, they are like
Hiding.
seamen / pirates, so
That's true.
I'm sure a lot of double talk occurs on those ships.
Yeah, kind of Popeye sounding gibbering. They go down into the cargo hold. They're really good at sneaking around this ship. Ships
Yeah.
are usually pretty cramped.
Especially if they're loading things up, I feel like a lot of people would be going into the cargo hold,
Nope.
right?
But they get in there, and I really like how they get inside, and somebody walks by and is like, why is this open? And closes it.
This shouldn't be open. Like, we should have thought about that.
And also that the cargo hold doesn't have a handle on the inside of it.
No, why would it? It's like a walk-in freezer for murder. Right?
And then, of course, the ship, they feel it start up and start to leave port. Which I think that was the moment when they should have banged on the door and been like, oh, whoops, we're going to get stuck in here.
No, but they had to find clues.
That's true. They don't in the cargo hold, though, right?
Not in this cargo hold.
No.
Or really any of them.
Any of the cargo holds. The next chapter has the best chapter title of any Hardy Boys book ever. The chapter title is Good Old Chet.
Oh, good old Chet.
Good old Chet. They pass out because of lack of fresh air. But then they wake up later, which I'm like, no.
That's not how lack of fresh air works. Like, when you pass out from lack of oxygen, you usually don't wake up again, right?
Especially
still in the cargo hold, right?
With the door closed. But they get a second wind somehow. They do really the only thing they can do, which is alert the crew to their presence.
Yeah, they're trapped in a room with no oxygen until it all of a sudden has oxygen again. And
they don't try to find out where that new burst of air came from.
it was probably the window they could have gone out of. Right?
Oh, there is a window. But a guy comes in and is hey, what are you doing in here? And it's so hot in the cargo hold that all their makeup and disguise has all
just
come
slopped off on the floor.
So when he opens it, he's like, why are there teenage boys wearing makeup in here?
What are you kids doing, huh?
And at no point thinks like, oh my God, what crew member kidnapped these boys wearing makeup and put them in the cargo hold?
I mean, that seems like the most logical thing.
Yeah,
some crew member had a plan.
to kidnap some teenage boys.
Yeah, ransom. Or
That's what
other
they should have
things.
said. But yeah, I love that they're wearing like eyeliner and like I imagine just heavy stage makeup.
All of the sailors are like, oh, that rock and roll. It's really
Messing with
causing
those
trouble.
guys. But yeah, they get brought to the captain and they're told like, hey, these are the kids that we saw and we threw off the boat like earlier in the story. And they demand they let him off the ship, which just I'm like, you're setting him up for it, Frank.
You know, they demand a lot of things of a lot of people.
Yes,
and I just really can't wait till they graduate from college and someone's like, no, you can't have this job. Or no,
And they're
I will
like,
not.
I feel like they're going to end up like the guy from Catch Me If You Can, where if they're told that they can't have a job as a doctor, they just steal somebody's credentials
Yeah, and pretend to be a
start
doctor all
performing
day.
surgery.
Yeah.
Like, look, I'm a Hardy Boy, okay?
There's
I'm sure
nothing I can't do. This chest needs to be open. I don't need a knife. We're really strong.
Yeah, absolutely. They're so strong, but they can't beat all these pirates. So I can't. So they get put to work, right?
Yeah. Apparently, with stowaways, you make them work and feed them little,
Yeah.
but for sure don't pay them or kick them off your ship at the next port.
Yeah, they have actually really good, like, plausible deniability here, where if they pull into port and there's no teenage boys, and they're like, we have reports there were teenage boys on the ship, they'd be like, search the ship.
We've got teenage workers that we've been enslaving for the past several days.
And the thing is that they jump from kidnapping to slavery, like, without missing a beat.
Yeah.
They don't even bat an eye at it. They find out that they're going to a place in the Canadian coast, that's the next stop for the ship. And their plan is, all right, when we get kind of near shore, we're going to jump off the ship, which would normally work. But the crooks, while not being brilliant, aren't absolute idiots, because the captain the night before is like, oh, and lock them up, because they're going to try to jump off the boat as soon as we get close to shore.
The captain can see a few things coming.
Yes, but he's not smart enough to just kill them, which the crooks are never smart enough to realize that.
I would have if I was a pirate seaman / knight, I would have killed these boys a long time ago.
Yes, you would have just, like, one cement block, toss them overboard, see how strong.
No one's going to find it. We're on the ocean.
Yeah, and they weren't supposed to be on the boat.
They're not on the manifest.
So you can
that
just
the guy
be like,
checks with his baton.
No idea who you're talking about. We haven't seen any teenage boys. When they get into port, though, they say 2 Canadian policemen, but we know they're Mounties, right?
They have to be. On horses.
On horses.
Like, they had to come up with gangplank on horses. Also, just out of left field. I mean, it's like standard procedure in Canada.
Yeah.
Any ship comes in, send the Mounties.
Send the Mounties to check it out. And the Mounties, like, they come on board and they're like, are you the lads from Bayport? And the Hardys are like, yes. They're super happy. And the captain's like, well, they're stowaways. Like, that matters at all.
But they're still the kids you kidnapped from America.
Sure, but just so you know, we only locked him up to teach him a lesson.
And then sailed them to Canada, right?
Yeah, but
I mean, there's some international things happening
You
here.
should have turned around as soon as you found out they were minors on the
Yeah,
ship.
take them back.
You literally took them out of the country.
It's a problem.
But yeah, apparently Chet, who was watching them sneak on board the ship when he didn't see them jump off as it left the dock, waited a while.
Yeah, just to see if they were coming back.
Yeah.
Right?
And then went to the Hardy's house and was like, they're not coming back. And then they found out where they were going and were able to rescue them. So good old Chet.
Good old Chet.
But then, let's see, they sleep for just a few hours when they get home. You think that they'd sleep for like 2 days.
Yeah, there's surprisingly a huge lack of sleep for these teenage boys.
We were just told that they were barely allowed to get any sleep on the ship.
Yeah, and I don't know why, because they passed out from lack of oxygen. I feel like that's the best sleep you can have, right?
That is the deepest sleep, right next to death. This is a great time to check in with Bingo.
I've got disguise. I have a horse chase on here, but I feel like Mounties...
They weren't chasing each other.
That's true.
Yeah, that's multiple people on. I have trespassing.
I have trespassing as well. All right, so I'm doing all right. Let me see.
All right, the boys have left Bayport. I have that one. A plane ride where nothing bad happens.
Oh, that's
They
coming.
flew to New York, right?
They did.
Nothing bad
And then
happened.
they flew back.
Yeah, okay, so that's 2 flights already. I do want to start keeping track of
I've got fist fight. I mean...
Okay, yeah, there was definitely a fist fight.
I also have school. It started with school.
This is the very first time their school has ever appeared.
Really?
Yeah, at that track meet was the first time the high school track meet.
So are you telling me I am the first to receive the school square?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm feeling.
I didn't
really
even
good
realize that at the time.
I'm feeling good about that.
But I want to make sure that I'm keeping track of how many flights. They've already taken 2 flights, and then they fly back from Canada. So that's a 3rd flight. And we're only at chapter 5. And that's not even counting Fenton Hardy's flights. I'm just going to count the boys.
Okay, I'm getting close.
All right. So then I think this is case number 2, because the first case was, we're trying to find out what the heck this boat is up to.
Yeah, it was just watch the boat.
Watch the boat was case number 1.
And they blew that entirely by boarding the boat.
By boarding the
several
boat.
times.
It makes me think of like a Dungeons and Dragons game where the Dungeon Master has a very clear plan for what people are supposed to do. And no one does that.
No, then the Dungeon Master's just making things up.
Yes, and that's what is happening in the story on the fly. Case number 2, Mr. Hardy tells the boys, I've been engaged by the Reed Museum Association to investigate a series of thefts. 4 museums have been robbed within a few days, 3 in the United States and the Abbey Museum here in Montreal. And it turns out that the things that are being stolen are the DeGraw collection, items from the DeGraw collection, which is the suits of armor.
I mean,
and
it's
stuff.
treasure.
It's
just
treasure. It's pirate treasure.
It's pirate treasure.
Priceless royal treasures, including scepters, crowns, and orbs. Which you always see the orbs and scepters in treasure cases, but you never see anybody use those for anything.
No, they're just for show.
Oh, okay.
You just walk around holding an orb, and they're like, "Oh, he's rich.
Look at
He's
that
got an
orb."
orb."
The Hardy Boys quickly make airline reservations, and were on their way within the hour.
The speed in which they book flights would put any website to shame today.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. It's like walking up to the train station ticket seller.
Right. They're
yeah.
also flying from very random small places in Canada and
It seems like
upstate New
air
York.
travel used to work a lot better than it does now.
Yeah, it's TSA's fault.
Yeah, absolutely. They've slowed it down.
I also, every time they took a flight, imagined that these two 17-year-olds are sitting around like 14 businessmen just chain-smoking cigarettes and drinking martinis.
You have to imagine a heavy layer of smoke over everything that happens to the Hardy Boys.
Yeah, okay.
Especially the airplanes. So they decide they're going to fly to New York immediately. They're going back to New York to check out the Stand-In Museum because it has just been robbed. This is kind of cool. This is something that I don't even need to make fun of the Hardy Boys about because they straight up have a laser grid in this museum to protect the treasures from being stolen.
Yeah, that doesn't get explained until way later in the
we
book.
just have a laser grid, beams of light crisscross the exhibit room. And yeah, and they're like, well, it's unbeatable because if anybody steps in the room, it sets off the alarm.
Yeah, until we find out later that it's totally
beatable. Yeah, and very, very simple. So they decide that since there's 5 museums left that haven't been robbed, they're all going to split up and each go cover a museum, right?
Yeah.
And act as guards. So they rope Chet in.
Yeah, Chet, they keep giving him chances and then keep letting him down.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, Chet, come with us. Never mind, Chet.
Never mind,
You
Chet.
stay
You
here.
can't. You stay here. They want somebody in case a person needs to get badly injured.
Ah, that's
They're like,
Chet.
then it can be Chet.
So he's like Guy from Galaxy Quest.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
He's exactly that.
Chet, got it.
And then they're like, we'll also call Sam Radley and have him go check out the one in California. Sam Radley is Fenton's longtime body man, like his like.
Okay, because I had never reading one of these before. I was like, oh, and then Sam.
But
Yeah,
see,
you know.
That's the thing about Sam Radley is from his very first appearance, that's how they've handled Sam.
Oh, all
Where
right.
they've been like, I'll just call my good friend Sam Radley. And maybe in one book, it was like Sam Radley was an old business acquaintance of Fenton. But sometimes since then, Fenton has gone on like a full week vacation with Sam.
And now Fenton's previous employment was as a detective.
He was a detective for the New York City Police Department.
Okay, so Sam's probably a mafioso.
Yeah,
right?
something like that. But either way, it's very clear that they have some sort of relationship because frequently they're like, Mom, where's Dad? And she's like, he left with Sam, not answering their phones.
So obviously Fenton's been on the take for a long time.
Yes, one of my theories that comes up a lot is that Fenton is actually a criminal mastermind himself.
Yeah.
And uses the boys to run interference on his rivals.
It makes a lot of sense because also Dad's out of town. There's a bunch of your dad's not here right now, and then all of a sudden he flies in out of left field,
and he just shows up. Yeah,
he's running a huge organization.
They ask if Chet can come, and Mr. Hardy says, "Do you think he can handle an assignment like this?" It's like, well, he literally just saved your children's lives.
Also, give him a chance.
Yeah,
I have a feeling Chet is the real winner here. He's going to turn into a great person after all of this bullying, after all of this letdown, or a serial killer.
Sure, he's going to
one or the other.
he's going to end up as their greatest enemy.
Yeah, right.
Like the supervillain. He's their Dr. Doom. When Frank alone goes to a museum in Philadelphia and he walks in, they're like, "Oh, you must be the Hardy Boy. It's so pleasant. It's nice to meet you. Your family's famous." I'm like, he's 18 years old. If an 18-year-old walked into the museum where I work and was like asking questions, I'd be like, "Do you have like an adult with you, or are you with a school group?"
Oh, no, it's fine. I'm a detective, but not for any police department. Oh, then come right in.
Oh, right. Oh, you must be famous, internationally famous Detective Fenton Hardy's son.
Yeah, and they call him Fenton Hardy's son. They don't know the boy's name at all.
No, but they know that he's Fenton Hardy's son. They go to check out the DeGraw collection. Frank almost gets crushed to death by a pillar.
Yes, he does. That's attempted murder.
That's attempted murder.
That's
so if you got that on
attempted
your
murder.
bingo,
I do.
Definitely check that off. I think I got that one as well. Oh, I'm bummed. I don't have surfing is on my bingo list, and they don't go surfing in this one.
Also, in this museum, after a priceless artifact has been shattered on the floor.
Right.
And Frank's like, someone must have pushed it over. No one's like, did you?
Yeah.
Did you push it over? Because that's
you,
a problem.
You showed up. You were the only one in the room.
And all of a sudden we have smashed artifacts, right?
And he's like, no, somebody must have been trying to kill me. Which seems very, unplausible. Like, again, if some kid at the museum, if you walked into a room and there was something smashed to pieces on the floor and they were like, someone pushed it over and tried to crush me with it, you'd be like, okay, well,
you're going to have to stay here for a while we talk about this.
Yeah, and try to figure out why you're lying.
Yeah, you little liar. Please don't lie to us. Someone tried to murder me.
And then the member of the staff is like, are you suggesting somebody deliberately toppled the column? And Frank says that it's a possibility. And they're like, well, why would somebody do that? And he's like, I'm not at liberty to say.
You're like, okay, child who's just smashed a priceless artifact, you're not at liberty to say, well, I'm not at liberty to tell you why you're being arrested, but I think you can figure it out.
They do immediately call the local police, and I kind of wish the police would have showed up and then arrested Frank.
I mean, that seems like the most logical thing to do.
Yeah, but I love how little information he's willing to give these people who he's trying to protect from being robbed.
Yeah, everyone's really keeping their cards close to their chest, right?
If we all gave each other all the information, this mystery would be over.
Yeah, we could figure this out. Please tell me what you know.
There's one man who makes Frank uneasy when he's like, who's that? Because Frank has really good judge of people.
Yeah, also, this man was just doing his job.
Yeah, he was putting away gardening tools in the basement. And he's like, who's that guy?
He's like, that's our gardener. I don't trust him.
And it turns out, totally right call.
Totally right.
Yeah.
He's got a hunch.
Why does Frank fake being sick?
What page? Oh, it's to use the phone at the restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
What?
And the guy who owns the restaurant...
He's being followed.
Yes, so
and he goes into a
restaurant, orders a sandwich, and is like, can I use your phone? No. Oh, I'm sick. Yeah. And then the owner comes out and is like, I've never made someone sick in my life. How dare you? It's like, it's a really weird restaurant you stumbled into. Also, it was early in the day, but they're like, we're closing down. We only have sandwiches?
I love all of this so much. And then he's like, okay, well, then somebody call me a taxi. And they're like, okay, somebody call this kid a cab and get him out of here.
So he doesn't use the phone ever. His plan to be sick to use the telephone didn't really pan out.
But he does get a taxi, and they put him in a taxi. And he's like, take me back to that museum.
Yeah.
He just says, take me to the museum. And he's in Philadelphia.
I'm pretty sure there's a lot. There's several museums there.
Her cab driver's just like, all right, I'm going to pick a museum.
Oh, let's go to Constitution Hall. Independence Hall? I think it's Independence Hall.
Okay. Yeah, and so he goes to check on the guards, and the guards are like, oh, I haven't been robbed yet. But then there's a hiss of gas.
Yeah, this gas is super effective.
Just like... It fills a large museum space.
Knocks everyone out, even though they said we only have 4 guards and this 18-year-old.
Yeah, knocks them all out.
Yeah.
I don't know if Frank has ever been gassed before. That might be a new one.
That's kind of
nice. I might add that to the bingo.
Well, I mean, he's been to the dentist.
Gas. That's true.
Probably.
Yeah, but it's like the old 20s, 30s. So like...
So chloroform? I think that's what they do at the dentist.
Well, they've definitely been chloroformed before. A sweet-smelling rag is always like, a rag... He's like, I smelled something... He smelled something sweet as a rag was put over his
let
mouth.
me smell.
Woke up and they're like, something strange about that rag. Give it to me again. And then at the crime scene, they find a cutoff when they all wake up and the police are there and all the artifacts are stolen. There's a short piece of rope, and Frank shows it to the police officer. He says, "Do you mind if I keep this for a while?"
And the cop is like, "Sure,
yeah,
we might need it back, but you just take that. We're gonna fingerprint all this stuff, but please grab that with your hands."
Yeah, and he takes it with him. Doesn't put it in an evidence bag, and he's like, "Hey." He's like, all right, hey, we'll let you know if you find anything, and hey, we might call you and need that piece of rope back. And he's like, okay, cool. Does that rope ever come back into play?
It does later when they're looking at it. They say, this rope looks like it was cut by seamen.
Oh, yeah. They're like,
cut really straight. Because only sailors can cut rope straight.
Why is he allowed to take it?
He's a hardy boy. Duh.
He's a Hardy Boy who's not even in his own hometown. These aren't the Bayport police. This is the Philadelphia Police Department.
Also, there's no grogginess after this gas.
No,
he
he,
came
like-
up like really together.
It's one of those like in an action movie where a character's lying on their back and they like leap up onto their feet.
Yeah.
That's what he did. And then I imagine all
and
the
then
other
immediately
guards.
spotted rope on the ground.
Yeah. And the other guards were like, oh.
Also, these pirates are idiots. They
Yeah.
are only they're breaking into museums successfully.
Yes,
and
but
then
only
stealing
stealing-
terrible crap that they have an affinity towards. Right?
Yes, they should have stolen the most valuable things as well as the things.
Yeah, why not? You've already won.
Right, and also it would have like made it harder to figure out which museums were going to get robbed.
Or what they're after.
Yeah, if they would have tried to they should have picked something else.
Like, just steal one diamond.
Yeah, and then that
one.
maybe could have financed some of the operation.
Maybe then you could have private jets, pirates.
So they all of let's see, Chet and Sam Sam just telephones from California. He had trouble getting an airline reservation and won't be here till tomorrow morning.
Because those Hardy Boys keep getting him so fast, no one else in the country is able to do it.
There's a whole operator switchboard that's just the Hardy Boys getting airline. But they decide they're going to go watch the Black Parrot again. But this time, they're just going to observe it from a distance.
Are they?
Because that was the first thing they were supposed
That's
to do.
what you told us
They
to do
seem to be
last
having
time.
trouble. They have really itchy trigger fingers when it comes to rushing on board boats.
That are obviously international boats.
And then, okay, so he flew to Philadelphia.
Uh-huh.
And then he also flew back from Philadelphia.
Uh-huh.
And then they're now flying back to Canada.
Right.
Because that's where the Black Parrot is going to be docked.
Yeah, also these pirates should dock in a new port every now and then.
Yes.
Just mix it up.
Don't pick the same two
Don't leave
ports.
a paper trail, right?
Oh, they make a bunch of fat jokes at Chet, just to be mean. And they talk to somebody about the Black Parrot, or they overhear some people talking about it and how everyone on board the Black Parrot is a dick.
Yeah. They overhear this at the hotel or at some
or a
restaurant.
diner.
And two longshoremen come in just raving about this.
Yeah, they're
Really-
like, I don't like those parrot ships. The Black Parrot, those guys are jerks.
And the one thing I can believe is that sailors talk at a decibel that's just slightly too loud for normal conversation.
'Cause they're
so it's
used to
really
the roar of
easy,
the ocean.
Easy to overhear them.
When they get to the waterfront, they see the Black Parrot. There's people loading aboard what looks like piles of logs. And on the side of a vehicle is the name Norland Lumber Company. And then rather than staying and doing their plan, which is watch the ship, they decide we're going to follow that logging truck now.
Also, this seems like a really not Clue, right?
Not Clue,
You're
yeah.
loading lumber onto a ship.
Yeah. You're like, well, the ship is the focus. But they get distracted by this logging truck. And they decide, okay, so there's a lumber mill. It's a closed down lumber mill.
Apparently it's run on rough times.
Yeah, so I'm thinking like Scooby-Doo,
Yeah.
like abandoned mill outside of town. And they're like, well, let's go out there. Why?
Also, we haven't even talked about the cost of them renting cars in every place
Oh,
they've
yeah.
been to,
Yeah, they're constantly
right?
renting vehicles.
They've got a car that no one's driving them around in, so
Right.
they obviously rented it.
These just rich boys. Or maybe they're like Batman in that, they just have a bat. When you go to Detroit and Batman's like, oh, there's a bat cave in Detroit.
Yeah, or perhaps they bought an extra seat on each of these chartered planes for their car to ride with them.
Just sitting up in the seats. They drive out, they get a flat tire.
So that's
Then
huge for the deductible on the rental car.
Right,
That's
it's-
huge.
Yeah, and then but the spare tire in the rental car is flat.
Also flat.
So I mean, maybe it evens out. Maybe they won't charge them for that because that's sort of on them.
let's hope.
Yeah,
Let's hope.
I don't really know how it works. But yeah, so they decide they're just going to walk through the darkness towards this lumber mill. They've decided that this is now their goal.
Right.
And the most important thing is to figure out what's going on in this lumber mill.
Right, I think he's like, I think it's at least a mile away. It's like,
Well,
you don't know. You've never been here,
Let's
Joe.
walk through the woods in Canada towards a lumber mill. And then they fall in a hole.
Canada is synonymous with just random holes.
So they just fall through the dirt into a tunnel.
Yeah, I feel like this was probably like a lion trap or like a tiger trap or
I
something
don't know,
without
but
the
they end
spikes.
up in a tunnel full of people that are like, we've got visitors.
Yeah. Also, way to hide your secret tunnel.
Yeah. you
what?
didn't dig it deep enough. I just don't understand any of this. Why they went out there. Why
I'm glad
they
you're
fell
saying this. Because this is my first Hardy Boys book, I was confused most
of
the
the way through. Yeah, I guess that's pretty standard. Let's see. The guys are armed. And they ask what they're doing, and Chet just says sightseeing, and then they're like, the fat one's a comedian. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
This is a child.
Take it easy on Chet. Everyone is ripping on Chet.
And then one of them recognizes him, and they're like, these are the kids from the Black Parrot that we threw off the ship.
I'm like, well, let's let him go again.
They take him to the shack, and they tie them up, because there's a shack.
Oh, right. And then
they set the shack on fire.
No, they don't.
It's like an accident.
Somehow the car, as
the
it starts,
sparks
sparks. Yeah. Like, I have seen old-timey cars, and I don't remember you having to light something.
Like a wick.
Start them, right.
Yeah. But there's like a shower of sparks when the truck engine starts. And the red-hot particles land on some tri-brush. And smoke appeared, and then flames. And I was like, it felt like they were trying to soften the pirates a little bit. They're like, well, they're not murderers. They're negligent.
Right. So it'll be inadvertent murder.
But it seems like this truck would have started fires plenty of times before.
Yeah, especially if all this Canadian forest is just dry kindling.
How do they get out of the... They just get out.
No, a helicopter appears from, with their dad on it. Like already ready.
What the hell? What the hell? The crew members are like, we reached you just in time. What were you doing in the middle of a forest fire? And I'm like, whoa, it's already a forest fire?
Also, they were tied up, and it doesn't really... It explains that they were tied up, and then after they get out of the shack, they find a sharp rock.
Yeah.
But it doesn't explain how they left the shack tied up.
Yeah.
It's like, did you just tie their hands? It says a couple times they rolled to the door, and then they all exited. Yeah. Like, did you roll out of the door?
Are you all tied together? But apparently somebody spotted the fire and called the police. Somebody who was like, had their eyes glued on that shack.
I mean, within instance.
Yeah.
To call the Air Force, have them arrive in under a minute.
Let's see. So it turns out that some people were arrested in Montreal. So Fenton's going to go to Montreal to interrogate those three men, which I like to think he's going to
just beat them. He just beats them.
He chased him onto a train. There was a fight on the top of a train. Then he threw the guy off of a train. That guy ended up in the hospital. And just before he died, from the wounds of fighting Fenton Hardy on a train, he gives Fenton, like, the last little clue that he needs to solve the crime.
I mean, it was a good time to be a PI.
Yeah.
Right? Like, about 100 years ago was like the prime time to be a private detective.
You could do anything.
Killing people, but still getting the clues.
Absolutely. I'm trying to remember. Let's see. They decide now they're going to go sneak onto the yellow parrot.
Is that here? Or do they? Yes, because everyone on the black parrot already knows them.
And they don't. They're like, well, what if they like share crew or sometimes switch crews? And they're like, no, they don't.
No, they take this huge risk. They're like, well, it's really rare that these ships would have been close to each other. Oh, that's right. Let's take this massive risk of
that
almost
they
being
don't
murdered.
Radio each other and be like, hey, there's two teenage boys that just snuck on board our ship. If they show up on your ship,
I think it's the really famous, world-renowned Hardy Boys.
Might have been. They go to check out the yellow parrot. They see it tied to the pair. They're in Port Manthan. I think they do another flight actually after this. So forest fire, helicopter flight. But they talk to an old man who is like, you interested in ships? And they're like, oh yeah, I thought we'd look at some ships.
So I've got a vagrant with mental health issues.
Is this Captain Fallop, or are you talking about Katu?
Either one. I'm thinking both of these could fit that.
Okay,
so
great.
We'll get to the next person that's potentially a vagrant man with mental health issues. But this, I just want to flag this as possibly my first.
This guy. I can't even remember what Captain Fallop's whole connection is. He just lives on the dock, it seems like, to spout exposition.
He was an old sailor that wanted to come watch the repairs on the hole that was caused by a rock, said the ship.
Yeah.
But he was like, it looks like a huge hole shot by shells.
Yes. Like the ship has been shelled at some point. We never, just spoilers, we never find out.
No, they said something
at
about
the very
smuggler.
End. They're like, wait, what happened with that hole? And they're like, oh, that was in the 100 pages that were cut out after we revised this book.
Oh, cool. See you next time.
Yes.
In the Hardy Boys.
In the Hardy Boys. But they do mention, there's one little paragraph where like, and a smuggler fired upon it and then snuck off, and then they, that part of the story wasn't important. So
I just really want to know the smuggler who's trying to quietly move things from place to place, but also firing on any ship they see.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Today's episode had so much ridiculous stuff in it that Brian and I talked for a little bit too long for one episode. I decided to split it up into two. Tune in soon for part 2 of The Hardy Boys Drink Book number 18, The Twisted Claw, featuring Brian Kusic.